Rubber plants can be fickle things. They often go droopy, turn yellow, or stop growing entirely, and to be honest, it's something that used to drive me bonkers. I've got a bunch of rubber plants brightening up my home, from the classic green to the colourful Tineke to the sultry looking ruby, and once you understand what they want and why, they're far less temperamental. In fact, I've had Ron, my green rubber plant, for a good 10 years now. He was one of the first plants me and Mrs. Sheffield bought together all those years ago, and not only is he still with us, he's thriving. Well, sort of. He does look a bit weird, truth be told, but there's a good reason for it, and we'll come back to that in a sec. So I'm going to share with you all my wisdom to stop you making the common mistakes that end up killing your plant. The rubber plant that I'm most proud of is this guy here, Tim, my Ficus Tineke. Not only do the leaves look absolutely marvellous, but he's growing exactly the way I want him to. You see, I've played God with Tim and shaped him to my liking, and this is something so many folks are missing out on. You'll notice that Tim is a singleton. He's one lonely plant in a single pot, but early on in his life I sort of multiplied him by cutting him down nice and early. Doing so encouraged 2 new branches to grow where there was once one. This is the biggest and best hack to growing the best rubber plant. To prune like you've never pruned before. No, wait, that's wrong. To prune like you've pruned lots of times before, or something. Anyway, have no fear about pruning rubber plants, my plant friend. They love it, trust me. Once I made this cut, I waited a year or so for these stems to grow before going at it again on both branches, and lo and behold, I've now got multiple stems on these too. It's early days of course, but just imagine how majestic Tim is going to look with all these flowing locks. I'm well jelly. And check out this section. It seems God was smiling on me that day because I've been rewarded with 3 stems where there was once one. This is rarer than a 4-leaf clover, let me tell you. Now, all this pruning excitement does come with a caveat. Life really is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You'll never kill the plant by pruning, but you might not get the branching you hoped for. If this happens, then have absolutely no fear about cutting the same stem again, while whispering a stern warning in his ear that he better grow back how you want. He should get the message. I get tons of messages from plant folks the world over asking me what they can do about their naked rubber plant stem, and to be honest, I've only found one reliable solution. Now you might not like the answer if you're facing the same problem, but I think a hard prune is the way to go. You don't even need leaves on the stem. It seems photosynthesizing magic happens in the stem too, not just the leaves. Sometimes we need to be brave to get the best results, and cutting down a plant to Chinatown is most definitely brave, but I've done it lots of times and it always works. Not just with rubber plants either. It's like the plant panics, wonders what the bejesus has just happened, and kicks his growth hormones into action and sends out branches to replace what was cut off, sort of like a plant enlightenment. But again, it's not always sunshine and roses. Sometimes you might only get a single branch to replace the one you cut off. In this case, I just cut again and say a prayer. There are other solutions to this of course, but I've not had much success with any of them. There are lots of videos on the internet showing folks successfully notching their rubber plant to force it to grow a new stem, but that's never really worked for me. And then there is Kiki paste. I got excited when I heard about this magic paste and applied it to a bunch of my plants, but absolutely nothing happened. It's meant to activate sleeping growth points on the stem where you apply it apparently, but it's still a mystery to me. Oh, and a word of warning, if you're feeling all Leatherface, wear gloves to protect your skin because rubber plants sure do bleed and it's not pleasant. Honestly, copious amounts of white, sticky latex spills out of these guys for ages and it's not great to get it all over your hands. Other than that, prune away my plant friend. Let me know how you get on. The common trap I see folks falling into is watching their rubber plant down tools in winter, panic and start upping the fertiliser or needlessly repotting. You see, rubber plants are a bit of a funny breed in that they absolutely halt their growth in winter. It's like they go into stasis or something. They do in my climate anyway. Come the end of October, Tim, Ron and Ruby will not send out a single new leaf until March, and there's only one reason for this. Light. We get about 8 hours of the good stuff a day in the depths of winter here in sunny Sheffield, which is a fun experience, let me tell you, and the rubber plant just doesn't like it. They hibernate like bears and only come out to say hello when the daffs and bluebells are out in force. You might experience something else of course, particularly if you live somewhere more luxurious, but for us folks with long hard winters, we can only watch as our rubber plants do nout. So don't panic when this happens to you in winter. Just be patient. Dial down the watering and the feeding. You won't be needing much of either. And if you are thinking of pruning your plant in September or October, I'll probably wait until the spring. You won't kill the plant or anything daft like that, but you just won't see new growth for a few months, and that can be a hard pill to swallow. If you are the impatient type and want to fight nature, then a good bet would be to top up the light with a Scentsy grow light. I don't bother personally because it's not like they lose their leaves like alocasia or anything, so I'm just happy waiting. You can bag yourself a juicy 23% discount off Scentsy lights with my link in the description, by the way. Now Ron has had a bit of a checkered past, and it's all my fault, truth be told. Like I said, he was one of the first plants we ever bought. You know what that means, don't you? Noob settings were dialed to 11. Anyway, I used to keep this guy in my bedroom a good 3 meters from the window, and he put on a bit of a sulk. When I say sulk, I mean he only pushed out a new leaf every couple of months. Very slow. This spot, which is now home to this Monstera, is not good for any rubber plant. Why? Because he couldn't see any sky. This is a great rule of thumb when trying to think about where to put your guy or gal. If they can see a large chunk of the blue stuff, then chances are they're not going to be vitamin D deficient. And contrary to popular belief and going against what you might have read online, they can absolutely handle a bit of direct sun. Ron now lives in my dining room and gets about 5 hours of morning sun whenever it does show itself, and is growing big and strong. I will caveat this by saying it does depend somewhat on where you live. Live near the equator, and I definitely make the transition slowly and keep a beady eye out for sun damage. But just don't keep them in a dark spot. You'd actually be surprised how little some spots in your home get. And this little thing here rocked my world when I got it last year, and that's in a good way. I thought a spot like this would be decent, but the light meter says no, low light. I recommend getting one if you want to go pro. It's in my Amazon store. The great thing about rubber plants are of course the big gorgeous leaves they grow. I'm a sucker for the Tineke and the Ruby, almost good enough to eat. Anyway, those big leaves present a challenge, and an annoying one at that. Dust. Dust particles are to a leaf what light is to a moth, or a fungus gnat to a human head. One week your rubber plant looks lovely and glossy, and then the next it's got a thick layer of dead skin and toenails all over it. And this makes it much harder for the poor little fella to breathe. Well, not breathe actually, more like suntan. There are two options here, the easy way and the hard way. The hard and less fun way is to grab a wet cloth and painstakingly wipe every single leaf. This option is probably best reserved for big beasts like Ron is starting to turn into. But option 2 is the one I favour because it's easy and fun. Hose them down Shawshank style. Get in all the nooks and crannies and have a blast doing so. Not got a garden or balcony? Then showering with your little guy will be the option, though keep it PG, right? Now, something like this might be happening to your little guy, and it might be causing you to lose your marbles. A quick look at my troubleshooting handbook will tell you that there are a few potential causes of this. The most likely for this guy is a lack of nutrients, either from not providing a nutritious meal every week or by leaving him to get all tied up in knots. You can get your hands on my free handbook in the description, by the way. Well worth it. So rubber plants like food in their belly. An empty stomach equals less colour. I give mine Houseplant Focus and they're happy as Lassie. Don't fret too much about what to give them, just make sure you are actually giving them something and you're following the correct dosage and they'll be grand. But we definitely don't want to turn our little mister into the whale, so no trying to be a hero and feeding more than is recommended. And I reckon it's well worth just peeking at the roots every spring to see if they can be upgraded to a bigger home. Pull his trousers down and repot when things are a little too crowded. This was the problem with this guy a couple of months ago, so I put him in a new home and the yellowing has thankfully stopped. I've got a deep dive on how to tell if your plant needs repotting in the video up here. That's well worth your time. Another message I often get from my many fans is, when should a rubber plant be watered? Every 5 days? Every week? Every month? Stop it! Only water when the plant needs it. Seriously though, a schedule is a plant's best enemy. You could be watering every Saturday completely oblivious to the fact that your little guy is sitting in a puddle. Soon that puddle will suffocate the roots and bam, you've got root rot. Now, this does take some time, so the odd overwatering here or there shouldn't matter too much, but always check the soil first to avoid long-term problems. I know how heavy a well-watered rubber plant should be, so I use that as my guide these days, but I highly recommend a moisture meter if you're just starting on your journey. Overwatering becomes much easier when your little mister is living alone in a 5-bed mansion. That mansion can hold on to far too much wet soil for too long, which ain't good. A 1-bed apartment will do just fine. You might think that a big pot is the hack to make yours grow much quicker, but that doesn't really happen. It's much better to keep everything in proportion. And then there is soil. I used to keep Ron in a heavy potting soil without any perlite or anything, and he showed me just how grumpy he was. Dummy and Pram spring to mind. When the soil is fine and dense, it holds on to too much moisture for too long, and this is not good for roots. I switched to Cybertanica soil mixers a while ago, and Ron and Tim love it as much as pigs in mud. Check out down below for a 10% discount you can nab. So, Tim with those gangrene feet. When something like this happens, there is a bit of a process of elimination you should go through to diagnose the problem and then fix it. My handbook will help a ton, but to see the process I went through with Tim, check out this video here and I'll see you there.